Hi, this is Sean Murphy of SK Murphy. I'll be your MC for today's Lean Culture, Lean Startup Circle talk by April Mills on accelerating results. If you're a project manager, an entrepreneur, or entrepreneur selling to businesses, you face the critical challenge of fostering organizational change. We're fortunate today to have a briefing by April Mills on effective tactics you can use to accelerate organizational change. April is an engineer by training and a change agent by passion. She helps busy professionals to accelerate results in her consulting practice at Engine for Change. She is the author of two books that I have read and heartily recommend: Everyone is a Change Agent and Change Tactics 50 Ways to Escape the Status Quo. The slides and video will be available afterwards. April, take it away.
Awesome. Thanks so much. Thanks everybody for being here. Thanks everybody who's watching this video. Really excited to share some change agent tactics with you to accelerate results. So as we begin, let's talk about change agents. What are these change agents? Oh, there we go. Well, many of you have heard about the term change manager, right? It's a position. Maybe you've worked with these people. Maybe you've been in a change manager role. There are a few people out there who are in those roles, though, if we think about the larger worldwide community of people struggling to deal with the rate of change. Now, there's a larger group of people that are change leaders. These are the people change managers often support. Maybe you think of them as senior executives in your organizations, or those key people who are the figurehead for changes. But the conversation I want to have today is with everyone, because everyone has the competency and capability to be a change agent. And too often what we find is when we try to use tactics, if we're just an everyone in an org, when we try to use the tactics that are designed for change managers or change leaders, we don't get the results we want. And so my work and my passion is bringing this concept of being a change agent and equipping change agents to all of you. Because when you're trying to use those change manager, change leader tactics, often you're struggling to create change. But equipped with change agent tactics, what you'll find is you can accelerate your results and you can help the change leaders and change managers in your organization accelerate their results too. So that's my bold claim, my company's brand promise. That's what we're bringing to top change agents worldwide. And I'm excited to share that with all of you today. So the first thing, I'm going to declare a call to action or a call to a change in action, which is I'm going to ask you to stop reaching for the usual. Now, maybe in your experience, you faced a situation where you were trying to deliver a result, but you felt trapped and unable to reach it because of the conditions you were in. So if you can look at this illustration, you can imagine maybe yourself there and you're reaching for the keys. And what are those keys? They're often more people, more money, more time, more authority, right? Maybe you'd want to raise your hands. Did anybody ever wait for a promotion before you were willing to try and create a change? Because you thought I needed more positional power. Or maybe you were waiting for the next budget cycle because until they give me more money, I can't even attempt this. And so your results were delayed because of something you thought you didn't have. But what we're going to talk about today is how we can break free of this. One of the common tactics people use when they try to create change from wherever they're at is what I call driving people, where we're using coercion to compel others to change. This can be the boss said so or else. This can be the regulation demands it. This can be, I'm going to report this on your performance because you failed to meet my timelines if I'm the program manager. And maybe some of you relate to doing this to others or having this done to you. And if you notice in this illustration, that's me years ago pushing people to change. And I did this because this is the status quo. I was a young engineer. I'd been given an assignment to accelerate the work products of the organization I was in. And I used my boss's authority and said, he said, you should listen to me, do this or else. And I pushed and I pushed and I pushed, but I didn't get the results I wanted. Anybody have experience with this? Maybe raise hands or emotion reactions. Yeah. People admitting I've done this to people and I've experienced this, right? This is universal. This is the status quo. And now you have a name for it, driving people. And it frustrates us and it exhausts us. Because whether it's us pushing on others or others pushing on us, we are exhausted by this. And when you're trying to create accelerated results, exhaustion is not the state that really serves your interest in speeding up and creating bold change. Well, what do we do when we're exhausted? Well, we have some options, right? Again, in this status quo, we either stop, we give up, right? Either I stop pushing because they're not moving, or I stop moving hoping the person will stop pushing, right? If I just freeze in place, maybe they'll leave me be. And that denies us the results. Or maybe we wait, right? Well, I'll push on them again next quarter. Or I'll wait out that boss. Anybody ever waited out a senior leader because they'll be gone in a year anyway? I see some nodding, right? That's a common tactic. Or we escalate, right? I'm gonna go to the CEO, I'm gonna go to the board, I'm gonna go to the shareholders, maybe, right? Because I'm not getting the results I want. Somebody needs to do something. Somebody else should do something to make this happen. And that usually drains our energy. It drains their energy. The only viable option, if we want to accelerate results, is to change our tactics. And so let's go back to that cell and notice something important. This is why I use illustrations often versus photography for my slides, is each detail is intentional. Notice that there's no back on this cell that we find ourselves in. But if we don't turn around and look away from our common tactics, we'll never notice how free we are. And this is the state I find so many people in worldwide, trapped because they're looking forward at those old tactics that don't work, that aren't suitable for them as a change agent, that tell them to wait and stop and push and be frustrated. So right now, we're going to turn around and we're going to break free. And here's what that looks like. The first step in turning around to break free from the status quo is to think through this power paradox. So what often happens is we think others are more powerful than they really are. And we think we're less powerful. And you could probably think back to a conversation you've had with yourself or with a colleague where it's like, why won't Sean, who's the boss, just tell everybody to do this? I mean, who am I? I'm just the engineer. I'm just the lead. I can't possibly be expected to do this. I have no authority, but Sean's sitting on a whole mountain of authority, but he's too distracted and he doesn't care enough. And anybody admitting they've had a conversation like this? Right? But actually, what's really true, if you turn around and see, is others are less powerful than we think they are. Sean might be the boss, but Sean tells everybody go and do this on Tuesday. Well, what do we know? About 30% of people will really do it, right? He'll have to chase another 30, and 30%, get out of the net and they never get caught, right? He's not powerful. He can't just say it and everybody does it. And we're more powerful than we think we are. If we said, on Tuesday, I'm going to show up at noon and do this, and I want all of you there with me. What do I need to do to make it easy for you to join me? You'd have 70% of the people there with you, regardless of who you are, because people are curious. When somebody takes action, gets passionate, and is willing to do something to help them do it too, it's almost confusing. So first step in turning around is to break free from the power paradox. You are more powerful than you think you are. So now let's go use that power. And we're going to use that power to do what I call driving change, where you're choosing a change for yourself and clearing the obstacles for others to choose it too. Again, this is a simple change you can do as a change agent wherever you are to say, why does this matter to me? What am I willing to do? And do it. And then invite others to join you. So you'll see again, this was me, and I made this transition. And it was the biggest difference that I'd ever made in my career, this choice to move from driving people to driving change. And once I had a name for it and a picture for it, which you have now, I could then not only do it, but I could tell others what I was doing to help them join me. And what do you get when you're driving change? Now you can accelerate any change, as long as you're willing to be the change agent who takes the lead regardless of your position and clears the obstacles for others to join you. And you can think about this in the simplest case. I talk with developers around the world, and they'll say, you know, my team I'm on, that we just don't have good coding practices. And my first question is, well, how good are your coding practices? Well, you know, I mean, the boss hasn't said what we should do. It's like, if you want your team to have better coding practices, how are you going to show up and role model better coding practices? Now that's, you know, an entry-level person straight out of college can do something like that, or a tech lead can do something like that, or a senior leader can say, you know, in my organization, we're going to do these things this way, and here's what I'm doing to role model that and clear those obstacles. And when you do that, it will accelerate any change you're working on. And it's key how you use your power to show up, either to push or to lead, makes all the difference. But I'm not expecting you as a change agent, driving change, to transform the company you work in from the ground up, right? What I am asking you to do is live the change agent's motto, which is practical and tactical and centers on your power right now and what you're going to do with it. And the change agent's motto is, I will do what I can with what I have, where I am. And when you are free of the power paradox and free of that cell of looking to others to give you the keys to your success, what you'll find is you actually can do a lot more than you thought. You have a lot more than you thought. And your place in the organization is a platform, no matter your level in the organization. And when you start to see it that way, as your platform to lead others to something better, a whole new world opens up of opportunity to accelerate any result. And so that's this key first step in becoming a change agent. And now I'm going to give you 5 tactics you can use to make this practical and tactical for you, living now as a change agent, accelerating results. And before I go into those tactics, are there any questions? Sean, did we have any questions in the chat, or does anybody have any questions on this foundation before we go into the tactics?
Not yet. You're welcome to type any questions you have in. We'll cover them. We're also going to have an open mic Q&A at the end too.
Okay, great.
Let me just ask, show of hands, how many people have tried to lead a change effort in their team or organization in the last 3 years? Anybody tried to do that? Okay, 1, 2, 3. Okay. Yeah, if you're so there's two sides, there's two coins the way this comes in. One is you're a project manager, or you're an internal leader, or you're whatever, or you're trying to sell into a large organization, getting the change. Okay, April, I think we're ready for the second half.
Awesome, good. So you'll all have this experience. So now you can use this change agent side of you and bring it forward to accelerate results. Let's go through 5 tactics. And the key with all of these is when you show up differently, people will notice and accelerated results will follow. Now, if you don't want to be noticed, you're probably not going to want to be a change agent, because even the most subtle change agents get noticed, right? You stop pushing back so much, people will get confused. You start smiling more, people will get confused. So I'm just preparing you for the fact that people will notice, but it's the sort of attention you want from the sort of people you want to be around. When people get curious, why are you so happy? Why are you getting so much done? Why do you manage to make it through every day with less frustration? Those are the kind of questions you want in your life so that you can be that role model and that support to others. So let's go into these tactics. So tactic 1, shrink the change to build momentum. This is so counterintuitive to what the status quo is that I think it's really important to start with this one. You see, when we're driving people, we assume the only way to get enough power behind this is to make it big. You've probably heard people go, well, until the CEO cares about this, we shouldn't even try, right? So the status quo tactic is to make everything as big as possible. I once worked with an organization and they were struggling with their meetings. They weren't getting the decisions quickly. They weren't getting the right conversations. They weren't getting the data out to understand the true nature of their business. And their idea was, we're going to get 1,500 people to improve their meetings simultaneously through a program. And that was entirely based on the assumption that unless it was everybody, nobody would change. So they made it as big as possible, and then they pushed as hard as possible on everybody they could get their hands on. And you can imagine they didn't get much of a result. It was too much to manage, too many people to chase, and they ended up exhausted, defeated, and stopping. And the thing that's a secondary effect of making these changes as big as possible is we make them seem impossible when maybe they're not impossible. Right? And I love this illustration of the squirrel with the bear as the shadow, because when we're trying to make change big and we're trying to drive people, we oftentimes result to making things scary. I need to put some fear in you to move you forward. And so we take something as innocuous as, we could probably do better in our meetings together, and we turn it into, it's imperative that we have a strong meeting culture. We will never meet our sales targets, and then the company will die, right? And it's this doom and gloom and threat. And so what you find in these situations is we confuse what I call type 1 and type 2 transformation. So a type 1 transformation is, I've never done it, but others have done it successfully. Right? So you can think about, let's just keep going with better meetings. Have other companies improve their meetings? Yes. So is improving meetings at our company something where we have to define new laws of physics in order for this to get better? No. But oftentimes the packaging for a better meeting culture is as though we've discovered a new element to be added to the periodic table. Versus a type 2 transformation where it really is, no one has ever done it. Right? And the engineer in me loves watching SpaceX continue to achieve type 2 transformations. No one's ever done this. No one's ever done that. No one's ever. They're doing that. And maybe in your company, you're doing some type 2 transformation, truly out on the leading edge of bending physics and business to a new dimension. But most of the changes we're struggling with in organizations and communities are type 1 transformations. Someone else is haven't yet. And those are squirrels. There's a lot to learn, a lot to apply, a lot of opportunity. If we shrink the change and shrink how big and scary we need to make it. So the action of this shrinking it is define it in the smallest possible fashion and then take a small step today. So my antidote to that organization who said, we need 1,500 people to improve their meetings, is I asked the executive team, when are you going to improve your meetings? And then I sat there and waited. And they admitted that they had no plan to improve their meetings. They were waiting for everybody else. And I said, well, then you're going to keep waiting an awful long time, because if the 15 of you that are the senior executive team can't improve your meetings, no one else will either. You'd be better off just canceling that program and going on with the way you're working, because you're just exhausting people for no benefit. So tactic 1, shrink the change. The action is take a small action on it today, and you will get more results than you were with all that pushing and shoving that big mountain. All right. Tactic 2, practice makes strength. So often when there's so much change going on, we think we just need less of it because we're exhausting people. Actually, we're exhausting people because we're driving people. If it's something you're passionate about, you want to practice. And the more you practice, the stronger you get. And I use this video, you can look at it after the session, about the backwards bicycle, where this video series, Smarter Every Day, they designed a bicycle where they actually geared the handlebars backwards and tried to learn to ride it. Because if bicycle, you know, as I'm wobbling, how do I move the handlebars to recorrect myself? But this was opposite. And so the person on the bike had to practice over and over and over again until their reactions were tuned to the reality of the new bicycle. And that's the same thing with change. If you try and make a change happen, but you're doing what you've always done the same way you've always done it, that is going to pull your habits back to the way it's always been. So you need those repetitions in the new normal, in the new model, in the new reality, so that you get stronger. But when we make change happen less often, we end up with not enough practice and we end up weak. So the status quo is every change makes us weaker. That is not true. Driving people makes us weaker. Driving change and doing more of it makes us stronger. And there's this interesting quote from, of all places, the US Navy's Correspondence Manual, where they were talking about better writing in the Navy. But this quote applies to so many things in our professional lives. Improvement is doubly difficult when individual habit is reinforced by group inertia. So when you're trying to make change happen, when you're trying to drive change and everybody else is driving people, not only do you have to will up the power to drive change, but you have to will up the power to be able to avoid being pulled back to driving people. And we'll talk about my books later, but I have a lot of tactics in my books which are just about how to help you avoid being drugged back to the old status quo, to be put back in that cell. So it's important that you practice driving change, because that will make you stronger and more able to continue to do it over and over again. So you want to look for opportunities to lead more changes, to get involved in more changes, to create more changes in your community, in your company, in your life, because the more you do it, the stronger you'll get. And then the great action, once you've practiced, is to show off your change muscles. I know in my life, I've just been going through in the last 6 months so many changes. And when I line them all up and tell people between, cancer and hip replacements and job changes and business launches and all these different things happening, people are like, how do you get through it? And the reality is I've been honing for a very long time my change muscles. So it's very hard to overload me with change. But you don't start there. You start someplace else. But when you get strong with it, it becomes something you can help others do and lead them out of this drab world of driving people and into the excitement and opportunity of driving change. Now, tactic 3. Many people aren't using their primary stage to show up differently. And that primary stage is meetings. In organizations, meetings are where people come together. So that's where you want to shine. So tactic 3 is make your meetings your stage to shine. And what that means is if you look at your calendar, if you're attending a meeting, attend intentionally. Show up leaning in to the topic. Show up bringing something to help others be successful. Show up being curious and helping manage with the leader of the meeting, if you're not leading it, the conversation so it doesn't drift into somebody's pet time to tell everybody about their week, and you get the work done. Invite people intentionally. Find folks with talents that are being overlooked. Invite them to join. Help the people who are only there because they were mandatorily invited drop off the meeting. Has anybody ever gone to a meeting where somebody showed up because they were invited, not because they really were going to contribute, and because they were invited, they decided they were going to talk for half the meeting just to keep themselves from being too bored? Right? So many meetings I've been into have been derailed by the person who was like, well, if I'm going to be here, I'm taking the mic, right? You don't invite them to karaoke because they won't let you sing. They're going to grab the mic and take it the whole time. So invite intentionally is a powerful way to make meetings you're in better. And then act intentionally. You know, if you take an action, get the action done fast. Don't wait until 2 weeks out. Finish it the next day. Tell everybody, hey, we met yesterday about this. I just wanted to let you know I'm already done with that, and I'm happy to help anybody who's got their task too. You will speed up the clock of any team you're part of just by doing your part faster and helping others speed up their tasks too. So
A quick question on that, April.
yeah.
How do you balance kind of one-on-one or one-on-two versus larger meetings? Because it seems to me there's the wholesale and retail of change, and I'm assuming you don't start with wholesale, right? You don't, before you invite 6 people to a meeting, you have some kind of one-on-one conversation with each of them or something.
It depends. I mean, I've started meetings what I'll call cold, right? A change cold. But the key when you're driving change is to say, hey, all of you that are on this call right now, I'd love for you to join me tomorrow to talk about how we're going to build an accessible playground in my community. I'm really passionate about this, and I thought maybe you would be passionate about it too. And if you are, join me. And the great part about starting something, even if I were to send that to 50 people, is the only people who are going to come are going to be the people who are passionate. If you make it that optional opt-in, and I do this with meetings, I send them as optional unless somebody says let's meet and we've agreed that it's mutually mandatory. I send meetings as optional, and what you find is only the passionate people show up. I think too often we spend our time in effect catching all the fish and then spend a lot of time sorting out which fish are really useful. And my argument is build a net where the fish you want jump in. I don't know, I'm mixing analogies here, I suppose, but it sounds like it's resonating. I'm seeing a few nods with that concept. Is that helpful?
No, that was. Thank you.
Yeah, awesome. So yeah, use your meetings to shine. And there's plenty of tactics in my books about so many meetings are driving people, drains, frustrations, the place where I go to hear about what I'm being pushed to do next. And there are huge opportunities to just invert that energy, unleash capability, unleash results in your organization and in your work. Tactic 4, this one's maybe a smaller one, but really powerful because once it spreads, it becomes really exciting. And I did work for years as a civilian nuclear engineer, so I'm allowed one nuclear term here with half-life, right? Extend your half-life. And what I mean by that is your influence or your leader's influence in others' minds can be extended so that maybe a conversation we had 2 weeks ago, I'm still thinking about and I'm still acting on versus we had it and I immediately forgot it, is moving from so-and-so said, like in order. So if we were having a conversation, and I'll keep, using Sean as my foil, if I were to come in and say, remember, Sean said we have to do A, B, and C or else. And Sean's going to be mad if we don't do A, B, or C, versus I change that around and I say, as Sean was telling me about his concerns about next quarter's profits, he sees how vital it is that we do A, B, and C. And so I want to keep talking to you about what we're going to do about that. Which one are you going to remember? Right? You're going to remember the fact he's thinking about it, he's passionate, he's concerned, and he's doing something about it. and that'll stick with you longer. It has that longer half-life. Now it will fade off, right? If I have that one conversation with you about Sean's passion and 6 months later I say, now remember what we talked about, it's probably gone. But you can take something from I barely remember after the meeting's done to I'm thinking about it for weeks after, just with this simple change. So tell the story. This is why April's passionate about it. This is what she's doing about it. This is the work she's doing to try and remove the obstacles. And she's asking us to join her on Tuesday. That's more likely to get somebody to join me than April says we have to do this or else I think there's a meeting on Tuesday. I'm seeing some nods, so hopefully that one's resonating too. And then the last one for you today. Now, this is going to be a new term for many of you, but it's not really a new concept. It's sort of like a kin concept. So if you've done program management, project management, you've dealt with buffers, right? Project buffers, schedule buffers, budget buffers. We protect things that matter with buffers in these disciplines. And what I found as I was working with change agents around the world is many people might be willing to drive change, but they weren't protected while they tried. They lacked a change buffer to keep the new normal safe until it was strong enough to compete with the status quo. And so creating change buffers is vital to make it safe to be different until your being different is capable of standing on its own. And so you protect the change from the status quo with these buffers. And when you do, you'll accelerate the results within that buffer. And here's some of the examples of change buffers. A personal buffer might be you read a Richard Feynman book where he says, you know, what do you care what other people think? And you just adopt that mindset of I'm just not going to pay attention to other people's opinion of me. Now, very few of us can manage to maintain that stoic conviction in ourselves without other support. So maybe you add to that personal buffer, friendship buffer, where on a hard day, I call Sean and I say, you know, I'm just driving change. I'm using the tactics. I'm living the change agent's motto. And man, that status quo is just beating on me. And Sean says, keep going. You're doing the right thing. It'll be okay. And I feel more confident to try again tomorrow because I know I'm not alone. A leadership buffer. Now, this is an opportunity, regardless of where you're at in an organization, you can give others cover to be different. So say Martin and I are working together on a project and I say, we're going to start meetings on time, end them on time, have minimum number of attendees. And these are very uncommon in our organization. And he goes, I don't know if I could do that. And I say, well, when you do that, and somebody goes, Martin, who the heck told you you could do that? You say, April said. Now, I know I'm reversing the thing from before, but the key with this one is it's a policy. April says the policy is we're going to do this, take it up with April. So now it's not everybody else has to obey because I said, it's everybody else has to leave you alone. And so it's actually the powerful way to use your leadership to protect the new normal. And I've done this with peers. I've done this for folks that were above me in organizations. I said, anybody gives you a hard time, send them to me. I'm happy to have the conversation. And you know what? They never show up, but they also don't bug that person anymore. So Martin starts to say, well, April said so, and they'll go, oh, all right. And they'll just leave. It's the weirdest thing. You'll feel like magic. It's like, that was it. I just had to say April says. It's like, yeah, because most people just need a reason. And once they have a reason, they go on to the next thing. And so it gives you that space. Policy buffer. This could be, we're on a major project XYZ, and we want to drive change and do these things on project XYZ. So Sean writes a little memo, and it can be in an email. The policy on project XYZ is we do these things. So now somebody goes to Francis and says, why is your project so different? You just pull out the email and you say, on this project, we do these things. Now, Francis doesn't have to take all that attack. The policy deflects it. And so you can be different and hold the policy out and people will adjust. And then the celebration buffer. When you succeed, celebrate. Every week on LinkedIn, on my Engine for Change company page, I put up, let's celebrate on Thursdays. Let's celebrate our wins. trying to help people get in the habit of thinking every week to claim your wins, because that will give you that confidence to try again next week. You can't just claim success at the end of an 18-month project. You have to claim your progress continuously, and you have to claim it, not wait for somebody else to say it. And when you do that, and when you do that together, it creates space for different, creates space for accelerated results. So, to recap, hoping you've seen that you don't have to stay stuck in that prison cell of seeking other people's power, other people's authority, more money, more time. You are not lacking. You actually have everything you need, but you need to change your tactics first, break free of that power paradox, believe you are more strong than you've given yourself credit for, and drive change, not people, which you can do from anywhere in an organization. And if you'll do those two things and try these 5 and maybe more tactics, you will accelerate your results. So now I've equipped you, at least initially, to accelerate results. You can also check out both of my books, Everyone is a Change Agent and Change Tactics. They're available on Amazon, at other retailers. If you put the April K. Mills, they come up more often. All my proceeds for them go towards my passion project, which is building a rural retreat center for families with children with special needs. So if you not only want the content, but want to do good, you're doing good when you buy those books and share them with others. So I'm really hoping you'll let me know what you're going to accelerate first. And I'm happy to have a conversation where we go farther and faster together. You can ping me with yes, but, no, because, what about. This is the best part of these conversations. I love the banter back and forth. So really want to thank you for having me today. I'm going to put up my info so you've got that while we talk, and happy to take any questions.
So we have some time left, and April's got time to take questions. You're able to you can either unmute and ask it or type it in the chat, whichever is easiest.
Maybe I can open up this. Well, thanks a lot, April. I think that was very, very great. I mean, you have covered lots of ground. I mean, maybe I just wanted to share some experience that I had in the past, right? And then maybe, I don't know, maybe, I mean, just to see what your opinion is, because I don't know how exactly to navigate the situation. But in the past, I used to work at a big multinational bank. And then, this was one of those types of organizations where you were trying to drive some change, but eventually nobody wanted to change anything. And then, there was lots of people that they said, well, this is my ground. This is how we operate. We don't want any other person to even have a different opinion.
Yeah.
So then when I created my startup, I said to myself, okay, let's try to manage this situation a bit differently. So then I will try to be as open for feedback as possible. But then eventually what happened is that, I mean, at the beginning, people were trying to share feedback and say, hey, we could improve things that way. And so, right. But at some point, they started questioning everything. So, so instead of that being for their good, that was maybe not that easy to navigate. So my question was, where exactly do you see, I mean, the limit of giving people room for trying to drive a change, and also trying to say, look, we have to also, try to find a way that we can collaborate together, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it totally makes sense. And I think that the biggest opportunity is to define what are our standards together, right? And admit the fact that we're not all going to have everything customized for our preferences, but we are going to be open to improving our standard together. And I think that allows then for that convergence versus that divergence or that customization, right? So, I mean, I'll go back to my time. I worked in the nuclear power program, right? You don't get your way in that program, but you're all trying to show up to protect the platform's success, right? The reactor plant success. And you are all expected to always show up questioning everything, but accepting our answers together. And that duality is really the height of being a change agent, where you say, I'm passionate enough to change the things that matter and understanding enough to appreciate the things that need to stay the same. And so that, I think, is really what you're hoping to achieve is fantastic. Moving people from driving people, where unless they obey me, I've lost, to as long as we're succeeding together and I know how to clear obstacles and bring up my concerns, we can win long term together. You'll actually find when people are driving change, they converge on the mission better. Was that helpful?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. Thank you.
Awesome.
I first want to thank you, Phil, for taking your time and coming here and sharing your insights with us. And definitely thank to Sean and Teresa for creating this these events. Going back to your first comment on turning around, that is the hardest impediment for everybody, you, me, everybody. And that is how we can unlock what we have learned and relearn.
Yep.
If I do that myself, then I'll probably be ready to help others. And then we come across and say, it's all MBA courses, classes across the globe are teaching about maximizing the profit.
Yeah.
And that maximizing the profit derails the vision of what we do, because we've come to be me, myself, and I. And when I say, no, let's pull back and think about us. Do you know how many eyes in us right now?
Yeah.
I'm turning it around now, and I'm saying it's neither I nor us. It's them. It's our customers. It's our community who are benefiting from what we do. Because as soon as we provide the value to them, the value turns around and comes to us.
Yeah.
And that change is going to be cross-cultural across the organization. And the change starts with me and us, and then we can propagate to others. This is a very daunting path you're taking. Congratulations. It's really, really hard to convince people that the first thing is to unlearn what we have learned. Old habit dies hard. And that is what we try to learn. Again, the more of events like this, and more we hear from leaders like you, it's going to more resonate with us. Hopefully it'll take us to the next level. Thank you very much. It's been really eye-opening. Hopefully it'll have more effect on others.
Thanks. Well, share the recording with others. What I've found, to your point about the dauntingness, is it's actually less daunting than we think, because most folks didn't know they had an option. So many folks are putting a lot of time and a lot of effort to getting out of that cell, but the tactics they're using, even if they break free this time, right? I get budget this time, I get the boss to pay attention this time. 3 months later, they're back in that cell and they're starting all over again. And so I find a lot of folks that don't like living in that cell, but they don't know there's another option. And so that's where folks like you who've come to this session are the difference maker for your network, is now that you know there's another option, who are you going to tell? That's the challenge I have, is how to help enough folks worldwide hear about it from someone they trust, right? You trust Sean, that's why you came today, right? Sean and Teresa have built a reputation of being trustworthy people who show you things that can help you. So do that same thing for others. Share this recording with them. Show them it's an option to drive change. not just drive people. It's an option to accelerate results, not wait to be released from your cell. And when you do, you'll create wonderful and powerful change for them. Because then they at least have the choice. That's what I want to give people, the choice. They can decide when they're ready, if they're ready. But I think it's just so sad that so many people are squandering so much of their careers never hearing about this. Oh, thanks.
So, I think there's a couple things in the start small. I had a conversation earlier this morning with a guy who's now the father of a 2-year-old. And we both talked about the experience of watching our child learning to walk, right? And
Yeah,
they fall down all the time, right? But their butt is only like 9 inches off the ground. So unlike when you and I fall down,
right.
they get back up and bounce. So I wanted to connect that with a effectuation principle, which is the concept of affordable loss. And it
Yeah,
seems to me that your experimentation budget comes out of your error budget. So you have to, in any process or any workflow, you've got to have an error budget, and then you've got to carve your experiment out of that. So even in the reactor business, there has to be some things that you can let
yeah,
fail or that don't work, right? Or that
right.
so I think that's one thing that most people screw up. You want to talk about a big result, a big benefit. We've got to do this big thing, right? And
Yeah.
I think the start small gets overlooked.
Yep, it definitely does. And, safe to try, safe to fail experimentation, right? Even in the nuclear program, you would do a lot of, mock-ups, right? It's a non-active system that you test something on to test its viability before you take it active. And so we know we do that with mechanical systems. It's sort of ingrained in people's heads to do that with mechanical systems. Try it, prototype it, break it, test
Right,
it.
right.
Don't do that with organizational change, right? Go back to that meeting thing. Let's just start with 1,500 people. We've never improved one meeting, but we're going to define a standard for 1,500 people on how to run every meeting when hundreds of meetings run in any given week. We're not going to start with one. We're going to jump to 0 to 100. Why? Don't do that. Improve one meeting. Move on.
Right. I think the other thing is that your containment budget. So if you do it one place and it fails, the
Right.
spill you leave is
Right.
tiny, right? Compared to, let's switch everybody over and if it fails in 40 places at once, now you're into Sorcerer's Apprentice land, right?
Yeah.
Where
Yeah.
yeah.
Totally. And honestly, most of the times we don't even see the consequences when we go too big. We drain energy, enthusiasm, motivation, morale, camaraderie, connection out of the organization, and it's unmeasured. It's felt, but we don't quantify it in a way where we get really angry and stop doing it. Again, because we don't think there's other options.
Right.
And once you know there's another option, you can see that suffering and you know how to repair it. And that's the most exciting thing. Living life as a change agent is there's less frustration and less sadness and more connection. All the things we're searching for, you get more of when you do this.
Well, I'm going to give people one last chance to ask questions, and then I think so any final questions for April?
Yes. Hi.
Hi.
I had a question about if you had any advice for surviving under blame culture. So right now I work as a consultant, and our group is under the scrutiny of one of the C-suite executives, right? There's one individual, so to speak, that has it out for us. And it's making it very hard to um, do the things that typically come with an implementation. There's a degree of experimentation, there's a degree of, trying new things, and there needs to be space for failure within the scope of the work so that we can kind of experiment with the method that works best.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah, a few things come to mind, right? One is obviously there's some change buffer around your organization that needs to be repaired, right? Because if you are trying to
Mhm.
show up differently and you're constantly being, I'll use the terms right, attacked for it, that suggests to me there's a gap in the buffer, right? So what is that with the leader,
Mhm.
with relationship with the leadership? Another thing I'll point you to, which we haven't talked about here, but it's the 50th tactic in that change tactics book, is an authorization assessment and competence assessment. And I use that to repair trust. Because what I hear is there's a breach in trust, right? I'm the senior leader. I don't trust your ability and your group's ability to deliver. And I'm validating my assumption with all of these details.
Mhm.
So the way I would reset it is to look at, and what that tactic talks about is, do you have the technical competence? Like, is there a gap in technical competence? Has something changed in the work where there really is our guy that did that left and now we're struggling? Business acumen, did something change in the business where maybe we used to be, cash flow rich and now we're really struggling, and so we have to make different decisions, and your division's behaviors aren't compensating for that. Maybe there's a gap in business
Mhm.
acumen now. And then the last is change competence. Like, do they have confidence you can make change happen in a way which doesn't break client relationships, damage employee morale, all of those second order consequences of doing change well or poorly? Do they have fear there? And so this assessment says, assess us
Mhm.
on those three things. And then based on that assessment, let's have a conversation of what would it take to repair that trust so we can go out and act and deliver and notify you of results versus constantly having to conclude and recommend or be watched. So check that out. That would be my recommendation to help you out of this gap in trust and repair
Mhm.
that.
Yeah, I think you hit it on the nail on the head, as it's a breach of trust, because um, I often joke that the cost of trust becomes very real very quickly, just by the evidence and justification, explanations,
Yep,
proof, documentation, all that stuff.
yep,
That's the cost of a lack of trust.
yep,
Um, and
yep,
so, yeah, this really does help help me kind of give me a little strategy of how to kind of approach this, um, from business acumen, technical skills, and then kind of confidence.
yep. Yeah, that change competence. Yeah, I built that tactic because so many people were saying, well, I have a gap in trust. I guess I'll wait and hope that I can show up enough times in enough ways to rebuild it. And the engineer in me doesn't like hope as a strategy. I needed to have some practical tactics. And that was the tactic I built. And folks have used it to drastically transform both the trust, but also the path towards better trust,
Hmm.
just in a half-hour conversation. Because it gives structure to something that's uncomfortable and squishy. It
Hmm.
turns it into attributes, and it's easier to get through that and uncover some of those gaps. So I'd really encourage you to check out that tactic 50 and use that. It'll
Yeah,
save you tons.
yeah, definitely. Of course, um, I always joke that those folks needed therapy because nobody talked about their feelings. But you're absolutely right. Just being able to give a voice to that
Yeah.
and space for them to share that, and then just a path to get back to, um, I'll call a more collaborative relationship,
Yep.
because that's really where we want to be.
Yep.
On
Can I
that
take this?
note, April, do you have any final remarks?
Please help me spread the word that change agents exist, that folks can be change agents, and that there are these wealth of tactics they can use immediately to accelerate their results. That's what fuels me, is helping people protect those precious years of their career or accomplish those precious things in their community better and faster together. And without you spreading the word, I can't get to enough of them fast enough. So that's my call to action for you, is to live it and share it. Please share it far and wide. That's the greatest. If you got something out of this today, that's the greatest service you can do for me.
Thanks very much for a great talk. I want to thank everybody for coming, and we're going to break here. All right. What a great talk.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.